Mr. Jaworski, we thank you for taking some time to talk with us.
You bet, Ashley. My pleasure.
You know, getting to this point, the runoff election for Attorney General on the Democratic ticket was not without some hurdles. Rochelle Garza ended the night with 43% of the vote, but for days, it was not clear who came in second place. In the end, you beat out civil rights attorney Lee Merritt by about 4,000 votes, walking away with roughly 20% of the vote. So Garza has a sizable lead, and then Merritt endorsed her. So I want you to tell voters why you believe you're the better candidate.
Well, thank you, Ashley. And it's been a real pleasure running with all my colleagues, Ms. Garza, Mr. Merritt, and the others. Even though there was a great vote spread on March 1st, it's going to be different in the runoff. There's a lot less voters, more intentional voters, Ashley. And I think that matters greatly, and it plays to our strengths. Yes, Mr. Merritt endorsed Ms. Garza right away. But those who have endorsed Mr. Merritt have now come to my side. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Senator Boris Miles, and many others. The reason I'm the better choice right now for runoff voters on May 24th is we need to nominate the Democrat who can beat Ken Paxton in November. And Ashley, that's going to be myself. I'm a mature attorney. I've been licensed by the state bar for 31 years. My esteemed colleague has been working as a lawyer for 6 years. I have worked in local government as a mayor pro tem, and a city council member for nearly a decade. And Ms. Garza, who is 37, has a bright future ahead of her. She's not had a chance to serve in local government, but I think my experience, having served after Hurricane Ike and supported public housing in a very sort of hostile atmosphere, shows that I know how to handle the crucible, and I know how to work on day one. You don't have to worry about Joe Jaworski when he is the Attorney General.
You know, Republican incumbent Attorney General Ken Paxton also in a runoff with Land Commissioner George P. Bush, as you've alluded to. Now, whether it is Paxton who is favored to win or Bush, what do you think it's going to take to flip this office, and why do you think you're the candidate to do it?
I think that Mr. Paxton will win his primary, and it's a shame. You know, he should have resigned long ago, but he is essentially the political equivalence of shamelessness. The Texas House could have impeached him on any number of occasions, but they chose not to, siding with him because they need him to advance their racist and illegal gerrymandering. And it appears the Texas GOP is going to nominate him for the third time. So I can beat him because a moderate, call it mature attorney on the Democratic side will draw independents, moderate voters, lean Republican, lean Democrat, because Ashley, we're going to need them. There were 1 million plus and some change who voted in the Democratic primary. There were 1.9 million who voted in the GOP primary, outnumbering us. But the fact is there'll be 9.5 million who vote in November. You know, who are these extra 6.5 million voters? Well, I'll tell you who they are. They're the ones who are going to decide who the next Texas Attorney General is. And if we, the Democrats, can nominate someone that those voters have confidence in, then we can elect the first Democrat statewide in over a generation.
If you win this primary and are elected Attorney General in November, what's going to be your top priority for the state of Texas? What are you doing day one?
You know, I've put out some great social media graphics after I developed my day one menu, Ashley, and there are several of them, but two of my favorites are, number one, on day one, when I raise this very right hand and get sworn in as your next Texas Attorney General, I will dismiss every lingering piece of litigation against the Affordable Care Act, and I'll do it by lunch. That's number one. Now, by the end of the day, I have something special in mind, Ashley, and it's going to be to hold a press conference right about the time that the local media will be developing their final items for the evening broadcast. And we're going to release all the documents in the Attorney General office's possession pertaining to the whistleblower allegations against Mr. Paxton. And I will make them available to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI, because there is no way the People's Attorney's Office, the Office of Texas Attorney General, a consequential office, should be hiding anything from the investigators when it comes to Mr. Paxton. It's not his office, it's the people's office.
Just if I can make a request, the reporters would like to have the documents sooner rather than later, if that is indeed, your plan. The Republican candidates in this race have made the border a top priority for them. Is that something that you also want to focus on? And if so, how are you going to do that?
Absolutely. I consider it a crisis, but not just because of the number of human beings seeking a better life. I think the border is a crisis due to the performance art coming out of the governor's mansion and the office of Texas Attorney General. Nothing is happening but billions of dollars are being wasted on performance art. We are repurposing our DPS and our National Guard at great expense to their families and their mental health and not accomplishing much of anything. But I do understand it is a hot topic, so I've got specific items in mind. May I share them with you, Ashley?
Absolutely.
All right, number one, I think the Texas Attorney General Office ought to be partnering positively with the United States Department of Justice. And in that regard, I will take some of my very rich Attorney General budget and fund the hiring of 8 seasoned prosecutors who will go after the real culprit, the real bad actor here, which is the Mexican cartel. These are the people, this organization, the cartel, is who is engaging in human trafficking. And I don't mean sex trade. I mean literally bringing people across the border and then dumping them on the other side of the Rio Grande River. So if we have more prosecutors, which I will place all along the southern border in the western and the southern districts of the United States of America District Court, then we will be able to prosecute more of those crimes. Also, we have a lot of human beings seeking asylum. Ashley, I think a lot of them are frivolous claims, frankly. But American law, federal law, allows you to make the claim nonetheless. We need to do something about the backlog. And until Congress gets its act together, I do think Texas ought to take matters into its own hands. Let's do it positively. So, since I am not going to be an embattled attorney general like the incumbent, Mr. Paxton, I'll be out on law school campuses preaching the message that third-year law students can do pro bono representation of these folks asserting asylum claims. And I did it when I was at University of Texas School of Law in the Capital Punishment Clinic. It's a great way to purpose young, experienced law students who will soon become licensed attorneys, just like we do in medical school. And so they will be delighted to get some real world experience and handle some of the representation in the immigration courts on the border. And then finally, Ashley, there's some underpurposed attorneys in Texas, and they would be delighted to be asked on a temporary basis to be special magistrates, again, partnering with the United States of America and be the magistrates to hear these immigration claims. And let's get the backlog cleaned up. Those who qualify for asylum get to stay. Those who don't have to go.
Let's talk a bit about the leaked draft from the U.S. Supreme Court indicating Roe v. Wade will be overturned. As you know, Texas has a trigger law that will make abortion illegal 30 days after that ruling, which could come down sometime this summer. You have said that you will work to protect reproductive rights if you are elected. How would you do that in the face of the trigger law?
Right. I was shocked, just like you were and others were, when Alito's draft leaked. And I put out on my Twitter feed, and because I thought that was the quickest way to do it, my plan. And so it has to do with federal court, state court, attorney general opinions, and intervening in civil litigation. Now, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of hope of relief in the United States court system, because at the top of it, of course, is the Supreme Court that is about to undo Roe v. Wade. But this brings me to voting. And I think it's important that Texas, if Roe v. Wade is no longer the law and abortion rights are being returned to the states to sort out, then let's make Texas a reproductive choice state. And let's do that by electing reasonable legislators, and let's elect Supreme Court justices who will uphold the equal protection guarantees in the Texas Constitution. So let's do that. And as Attorney General, I will file litigation to initiate it in state court, and we will protect reproductive choice in a moderate, reasonable way so that women who have unwanted pregnancies are able to plan their families and be able to take action with their healthcare providers, with their spiritual advisors and their families. It's been that way for 5 decades, and there's no reason to undo the status quo, but it appears we'll have to be creative about it in state court. Also, Ashley, I'll intervene in any litigation brought against an aider and abetter, Senate Bill 8, which is just an unconstitutional, horrible law. They call it the Heartbeat Act. But just know that the Attorney General will be on the side of the people when it comes to that litigation. And then finally, Attorney General opinions so that we preserve some reasonable compromise on this matter. You shouldn't be able to get an abortion, I guess, on the last day of your pregnancy, but sometimes medical reasons and sometimes unseen ectopic pregnancies and certainly rape and incest, and certainly there ought to be a choice for women in Texas. It's been this way for decades, and it seems like that's all been thrown out, and it's just not a reasonable way to go.
You said that if you are elected, you will lead an effort to legalize adult use of marijuana. As Attorney General, of course, you wouldn't have the authority to legalize recreational use. So what would you be doing instead?
Well, I've been doing it for 20 months, campaigning on a reasonable legalization of cannabis. And by that, I mean, for jobs and revenue, to give our veterans an alternative to pills when it comes to their PTSD and their chronic pain. And so that we have, social and criminal justice reform. And when we remove this wasteful petty prosecution, then police will be able to apply their resources to fight real crime. But you're right, I can't do it by myself. But as an advocate, as I've been as a candidate, when I win the Attorney General's office, it's easy to conclude that it must have been something I said on the campaign trail. So I want to be the first witness before the Texas Senate when the bill is brought up in the 2023 legislation and legislative session. So imagine a constitutional statewide executive testifying for the reasonableness of moving forward, because all the other states are doing it, and Texas doesn't have to be last in this category like we are in so many.
I want you to give our viewers some final thoughts on why they should elect you later this month.
Well, I think experience, ethics, and integrity are what matter. And right now we are lacking all of it in the Attorney General's office, a consequential office to be sure, that could be used to better people's lives, the public health, address immigration crisis, and not create more crisis by more performative arts, waving your arms on cable TV every night. What if you were an accessible Attorney General, speaking to the future? I want to be an Attorney General that makes sure the law is applied to every high school, where the law right now requires principals to register every 18-year-old. It's just not done. Imagine if I could travel the high school campuses and speak to the civics and the essential act of American citizenship. I think people would respond to that. That's what I did when I was mayor of Galveston, and I was very pro-education and very pro-future. And I think the young adults are watching, and they need to know that the leadership at the Attorney General's office will reflect the diverse face of Texas. So you have my word that the Leadership Council I appoint, the 24 or so appointments that I'll make among the many employees, will be men and women, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, LGBTQ, because it's reflective of our growing diverse state. It's what government should do. So experience, ethics, and integrity, because I've been there, I've served as mayor, I've been a valued member of the bar for 31 years, and I have a good reputation in the state. And I think if we can get a public servant in this consequential office, it'll make a big difference for everyone.
We thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ashley. My pleasure.